Somebody drove trucks across my land in the middle of the night. Not once, not twice. 16 times over 6 weeks, headlights off. Diesel engines low, like they thought darkness made it legal. And when I finally figured out who ordered it, it was the woman who ran our HOA, the one who'd spent 9 years deciding that the rules applied to everyone except her operation. I called her politely, told her the trucks were tearing up my pasture, and I needed them to stop. She gave me 3 sentences. We've always used that path and we'll keep using it. Then she hung up. She had an attorney, County Connections, a Facebook group, and the unshakable confidence of someone who had never once been told by anyone who meant it. So I built something she couldn't argue with, couldn't petition against, couldn't charm or threaten or lawyer her way around. What would you do? Drop where you're watching from. Because what happened next, she never saw coming. My name is Everett Strand, 58 years old, retired electrician. I build things with my hands, fix things that are broken, and I do not, as a general rule, start fights, but I finish them. I spent 23 years saving for 5 acres outside Harlan County, Tennessee, not to develop it. Not to flip it, just to own a piece of ground that was mine. A place where I could walk the fence line in the morning with a cup of coffee and not hear anything but wind and creek water. And the occasional complaint from a crow. The property sits at the edge of a planned subdivision called Ridgeline Estates, 42 homes built into the hillside. Around 2010, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns are maintained within an inch of their lives. And somebody once filed a noise complaint about a wind chime. My land isn't in the HOA, it borders it. That distinction, 4 words. One property line is the entire foundation of this story. The smell of red clay after a hard rain. The crunch of gravel under work boots on a cold morning. The way dew sits on wildflower grass at first light, like scattered glass. I knew every inch of that property inside of a week. I walked it constantly, which is exactly why one Tuesday morning in late October, I knew immediately that something was wrong. 2 trenches fresh, 6 inches deep, 40 yards long, running from the gap in my southeast fence straight across the pasture. The grass was torn back in raw strips. The soil underneath was the dark, damp kind that meant heavy vehicle weight. Recent and hanging in the cold air. Faint but unmistakable, the greasy diesel smell of a truck engine that had passed through hours before. I crouched down and ran my fingers along the edge of the rut. Still soft, still damp. I followed the tracks with my eyes. They LED directly toward the HOA maintenance yard that afternoon. I called Darlene Pritchard. Darlene had been HOA president for 9 consecutive years, retired school administrator. The kind of woman who showed up to every county planning meeting with a color-coded binder and left having gotten exactly what she came for. Other residents described her privately, very privately, as someone who treated the subdivision like a personal kingdom and the board meetings like a sentencing hearing. I was polite. I explained the damage. I said I needed the trucks to stop. She gave me 3 sentences. We've always used that path. Pause and we'll keep using it. Click. I stared at my phone for a long moment. Outside, the wind moved through the old oak near the south gate. The creek at the bottom of the property made its low, steady sound. Everything was calm. Everything was exactly as it had been before I made that call. Except now I knew what I was dealing with. I walked to my workshop. It smells like cedar shavings and machine oil in there, the particular smell of a room where actual work gets done. I sat down at the bench, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and started writing. Not a complaint, not a letter. A list, everything I knew, everything I'd need to find out, every step between where I was standing and where I needed to get to. I've been an electrician for 23 years. The first thing they teach you before wire gauge, before circuit loads, before any of the technical work is this. Before you touch anything, understand the whole system. I didn't understand the whole system yet, but I was about to start learning. I didn't make another phone call. I didn't post anything online. I didn't knock on Darlene's door. I drove to the farm supply store and bought 4 trail cameras. Solar-powered motion triggered 1080p night vision. The kind deer hunters use to pattern buck movement in the dark, which, now that I think about it, was exactly the application. 48 hours later, I had them mounted on cedar posts at the 4 corners of my southeast pasture, angled to cover every possible approach to the fence gap. Each camera time stamped every trigger event and uploaded footage automatically to a cloud folder via cellular signal. Total investment $340. By the second night, I had 17 minutes of video I hadn't asked for, but was extremely glad to have: a white HOA maintenance truck. License plate clearly visible, rolling across my pasture at 2 a.m. with the headlights off. The driver parks near the fence gap for about 3 minutes, engine idling like he's checking to see if anyone noticed. Then he completes the crossing and disappears into the HOA maintenance yard. The timestamp glows in the corner of the frame. Green night vision light makes the whole scene look clinical. Official, undeniable. I watched it 3 times, then I downloaded the footage, backed it up to 2 thumb drives, emailed a copy to myself, and started a document. Log dates, times, GPS coordinates of each entry point, description of vehicle, duration of crossing. It was the kind of paperwork that feels tedious until the moment you need it, at which point it becomes the most valuable thing you own. Here's something worth knowing. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, in Tennessee and in most states, a private landowner can recover compensatory damages for repeated, unauthorized entry on their property in cases where the trespass is willful or reckless. Courts can award treble damages, meaning up to 3 times the documented repair cost. The critical word is documented. A timestamp on a trail camera is the difference between he said, she said, and a court exhibit. If someone is damaging your property, document everything before you do anything else. I mailed a certified letter, return receipt requested to Darlene, to every member of the HOA board and to their attorney, a man named Garrett Buell, who apparently golfed with the county commissioner. The letter was simple. Unauthorized vehicles have been documented entering my property. I have the footage, cease immediately. I was now on record, so were they. Darlene's response was not to stop. Her response was to go on offense. Within 3 days of receiving my letter, she circulated a memo to HOA residents, claiming that the access path across my property had been established by continuous community use, and therefore represented a valid easement that the HOA intended to formalize. Through the county, she CC'd Garrett Buell. She copied the memo to the neighborhood Facebook group, with a caption implying I was being difficult and obstructionist. The kind of language that sounds reasonable in print and is designed to make the person it describes sound unreasonable. Within 48 hours, a neighbor I'd always waved to stopped waving. Somebody left an anonymous note in my mailbox. The community needs that road. Stop being selfish, I read it twice. Folded it neatly, put it in a manila envelope, and labeled it evidence. It was a habit I was going to develop fast. The social pressure campaign was well executed. I'll give her that Darlene understood. Something that a lot of people in positions of small power understand. Most people, when faced with community disapproval, will back down before they ever face a legal consequence. The side eye at the hardware store, the silence where a friendly wave used to be, the anonymous note. These aren't accidents. They're tools, and she'd been using them for 9 years. What she hadn't accounted for was that I grew up watching my father deal with coal company lawyers. In this county, I know what a pressure campaign looks like. I know the difference between a community with a genuine grievance and a community that's been told what to think by someone with a financial interest. In the outcome, I went back to the workshop. The legal pad had more pages. Now the manila envelope had company. And somewhere in the HOA maintenance yard, a white truck was getting ready to make another run. The cameras were ready, so was I. Darlene didn't just want to keep using my land. She wanted to own the right to use it permanently. Legally on paper, and she moved fast.